We are 2 days away from the Buckeyes' second game in Ohio State's 2022 college football season, and you know what that means. It's Preview Thursday, and today we're going to get to know all about the Buckeyes' next opponent, the Arkansas State Red Wolves. You will not want to miss this fun preview of the Buckeyes' next opponent right here on Locked On Buckeyes.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes for the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is a Thursday, September 8th in the year 2022, and today's episode is brought to you by Upside. Download the free Upside app and use promo code LOCKED, that is LOCKED, to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. I would also like to thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. On today's episode, we will be joined by Mr. Jeff Reed. He covers Arkansas State for 24/7 Sports as Jeff helps us get to know all about the Buckeyes' next opponent, the Arkansas State Red Wolves. Non-conference games, they're fun. They can be easy for fans to watch early on, not so easy for them to watch later in the games, but you just don't know who might be on the other side during some of these non-conference games. There's a former Buckeye playing in this game for Arkansas State. The coach used to coach at Tennessee. The quarterback used to play at Florida State. A lot of names you might recognize, a lot of things this team did, Arkansas State did a week ago in their first game of the season. And guys, they do some things that if the Buckeyes aren't ready, they can take advantage of the Buckeyes while the Buckeyes are sleeping. Stick around. This is a fun little preview of the Buckeyes' next opponent, the Arkansas State Red Wolves, with Jeff Reed of 24/7 Sports. And joining us now here on Locked On Buckeyes, continuing our Thursday episodes where we preview the upcoming game, getting a look at the Buckeyes' next opponent. It is Jeff Reed. He is the publisher of A-State Nation. It's a website that is on the 24/7 Sports Network. Jeff Reed, welcome to Locked On Buckeyes.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. Excited about it.
This weekend's game is a test to me for the Buckeyes because it's a different type of opponent than what they faced last week via the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Arkansas State blew out Grambling State a week ago, 58-3. With only one game under our belt, we can't say we know exactly what to expect from the team overall. But from what you saw last week, how would you describe the Red Wolves team right now?
Well, I think for one thing, it's pretty obvious that, and this was the problem last year, inheriting a team that Butch Jones inheriting a team that, he brought in a bunch of guys and there were some hangovers and there were kind of mesh issues and just chemistry issues, and it showed all throughout the season and even after the fact, which later on would admit that it was a divided team. But now, this team is probably 90% Butch Jones guys. He's done thankfully for the portal and changing the scholarship rule to 85. You can have 85 and you can add guys at any time. It's really been a godsend for him. It's about 90% of this team is probably Butch Jones guys. And I think probably one of the things that stood out the most was there's a good team chemistry, and some of the guys have even mentioned that it's awesome. It's a great. It's very different than last year. Talent wise has improved also, but I think maybe having everybody or almost everybody on the same page is probably as big an issue as anything.
I agree with that. I know. Not just in sports, but just life in general, and even kids working on projects in school. If people are not on the same page, it's going to be really hard to accomplish the goal you want to accomplish, not just in sports, but just in life. And so you say that everyone's more on the same page this year that's a great move and a step in the right direction, I believe, for the Red Wolves, where there may have been some dysfunction. There may have been a really poor season last year where the Red Wolves only won 2 games, went 2-10 last year in 2021. Allowing everybody to get on the same page could be why the result in the play was what it was last week, because they obliterated Grambling State. If everyone's not on the same page, Jeff, that they probably don't have that outcome.
Well, yeah, you're right. And a year ago they played, Central Arkansas, and this is a story that Butch told me after we were talking one night time this spring, and he said after that first game, he said I couldn't sleep. He said I was out on my back porch smoking a cigar at 4 a.m. and his wife came out there and said, "You need to come to bed. You won. Be happy." And he said, hey, he looked at her and shook his head and said, "We won't win another game." He saw all the issues. He knew the talent issues, and he knew there was a talent issue because things had been slowly going downhill. And he kind of bottomed out with him, and he knew the chemistry issues were there, and he coached a long time. He knows how he can read these things. And well, they did win another game, and they should have won another one, but still he knew that it was going to be a long year. So being on the same page, I think is very good. They brought in a lot of news guys, and they're very, 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 very selective as to who they brought in. I mean, they've had some really good guys that wanted to transfer here, and they do their background checks and all that stuff, and say he's not a fit. So good luck, go play somewhere else.
Jeff, I'm looking at Butch Jones and just his career as a coach, not just last year. Currently, his record at Arkansas State isn't anything eye-popping. Well, it is on the negative light. It's only 3-10, but this is only year 2. And so last year was really a poor year, but you kind of expect some rough things in year number 1. But he has a winning record at the 3 previous stops that he's coached at. A winning record at Central Michigan, winning record at Cincinnati, winning record at Tennessee. And so I do think that there's a trend that we'll probably see, that whenever Butch Jones's coaching days are up at Arkansas State, we'll have an overall winning record there. And that's a positive thing, I think, for a coach in a difficult situation, not a place like a Tennessee or Cincinnati or maybe a Central Michigan. You got to work to get some things done. You have to cultivate and build some things. So I really think that Butch Jones might be the guy to kind of turn things around down there for Arkansas State, because he's done some good things at previous stops. I think he'll do some good things at this stop right now. And if game 1's just a look at what's to come, this team could be pretty tough in their conference over the next few weeks.
Well, I don't think they'll be the bottom dweller in the conference anymore. One thing that people don't realize is the Sun Belt has made a huge stride in recent years, and it's not that league that was the beating the whipping post for everybody for years. I mean, and there's some, like you look at last week, Old Dominion defeated Virginia Tech. App State should have defeated North Carolina. I mean, Georgia State was right there with South Carolina. I mean, there are a lot of games that it's a very good league. I don't know. I don't think they jump from the old outhouse to the penthouse just this season. But I do think there's a good chance of getting to bowl games. My preseason prediction, kind of a gauge, was somewhere between 4 and 8 wins. And of course, obviously 8 best case scenario. But I think there's a chance to jump up. I think Butch is one thing about Butch. He's very focused, and he's very determined, and he's very driven. I mean, he had you talked about his record at Tennessee, but if you listen to Tennessee fans, he was the worst coach ever. I mean,
right.
It's a fan base that they just baffle me, because I mean, hey, the guy did some good job. He gave you 2 9-win seasons,
Yeah.
But I think he knows what he's doing. He's got a plan in place. I think one thing that helps this year's team is he's really improved the quality of his assistant coaches. I mean, he's got a defensive line who was at Syracuse. Marquez Loving was a head coach at Austin Peay and has been a number 1 assistant in a lot of places. I think the upgrade there will help this team as well. There's just a lot of good things that are going right now. Even though you look at the 3-10 career record at Arkansas State, it doesn't say that.
Correct. There's a guy that is QB1, the starting quarterback for Arkansas State, and his name might ring a bell. People might say, "Oh, I saw him somewhere." Florida State transfer James Blackmon is he starting quarterback for Arkansas State. Just a week ago, he came out, only had 5 incompletions against Grambling State, 210 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Ended up having a couple carries, 11 yards there as well, 2 touchdowns in both of the carries that he had. He is a guy that when I saw him play, and I watched some film of last week's game against Grambling State that Arkansas State had, he looks really, really comfortable. And the offense seems to fit what his strengths are.
Here's one thing that a lot of people don't know about James Blackmon. This is the first time in 5 years in college that he's had the same offensive coordinator.
That's
He's
insane.
had it every year at Florida State, a different OC, and then he transfers to Arkansas State. So now there's another OC. But now he's in year 2 of this system. And I think that's why you saw a guy that looked comfortable.
Yes.
Even though he only played half a season last year before he got hurt, he's gone through 2 spring practices. He played, I went through preseason, he played half a season, and even then after that, he was still around the team and involved. So he's got a grasp of what they're trying to do. And I think that showed up a whole lot. Is he a world beater elite quarterback? I don't know, but I think he can be a very, very, very good quarterback in this league. He's got a very nice arm. And one thing that they did with him last week that they didn't do the year before is they actually ran him a couple of times.
Yeah.
And which I think helps because it makes the defense have to respect the quarterback running and not just on passing downs let the ends pin their ears back and let's go.
He looked so comfortable. And he was just making throws, dropping the balls right into the bucket, finding the hole in the defense, finding out where the defense may have been leaning one way, going the opposite. There was a touchdown to the left side. I forget who it was. I want to say it went to Champ Fleming's, but I don't know exactly if it was him who caught this touchdown. But it was like a good quarterback can make that. But I believe it was the eyes of Blackmon and some things that happened in the back. I think it may have been a play action that caused that window to be so large. And I just think he looks not only comfortable because the offense fits him, the same offensive coordinator, same system 2 years in a row. But I really just think his experience in being a college athlete for so long allows him to be the quarterback that he is. And honestly, if Ohio State's not ready this weekend, he can make some plays that will shock Ohio State fans and even will make them maybe a little upset because they believe the Buckeye defense will be good in 2022 based off what they saw last year. But Blackmon is a guy that if you're sleeping, he can take advantage of you when you're not paying attention to what's going on the field.
I think the key will be, and this is a big key for this game, is against a defense as good as Ohio State's, is can Arkansas State give Blackmon some time to throw? Now they did a lot of quick hitting stuff last week, didn't really sit back in the pocket and try to extend the field any. So, and I imagine they'll probably do a lot more of that this week because I don't know how long that they could hold out the Ohio State pass rush.
Right.
So, and you mentioned Champ Fleming. It's easy to know when they throw it to Champ. He's 5'5", but a very, very, very dynamic kid. He's from Southern California. He's from the LA area. Spent 4 years at Oregon State and then transferred down here and has been like a godsend to this team. Just the fact that he's a mature, level-headed guy. He's been around the game a long time, and he's very fast. He's very elusive, and he catches the football. He's just a football player is what he is. And, I mean, he is like a coach's dream because, he makes people – he meshes well with them, and he's just a good fit, and he's a guy that it was really needed. I think he's kind of a difference maker on this team, not only on the field but in the locker room. But I think James is going to have time, and that will probably be the biggest issue about the passing game.
Do you think that he can be someone that can get things done with his legs in this game?
I don't know. I don't know how much they'll run him. The backup quarterback is a guy named A.J. Mayer who transferred here from Miami of Ohio.
Mhm.
A.J. is an exceptional runner. And if you watch the game, when they put him in, they did a lot of read option and designated running plays for him. They will let him run, and he can throw it too, but his asset is his legs. James' asset is his arms, and I don't know. With the important games coming up, you got the rivalry game with Memphis next week, and then the week 4 you're swinging into conference action at Old Dominion. It's more important to have James for those games than a long shot upset of Ohio State, in my opinion.
I completely get that. There's also a guy who's a former Ohio State player. I believe he played a couple games for the Buckeyes, and Brian Sneed. Last week, Sneed had 12 carries, 57 rushing yards, had a touchdown, also had 1 catch for 8 receiving yards last week. He's in a backup role to Johnny Lang, and Lang had 124 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 reception, and 23 receiving yards last week. I also had a whopping 9.5 yards per carry, which always is amazing. It's amazing to me. If I see a guy that's 6.5, 7 yards per carry, that always pops out. But how do Lang and Sneed kind of complement each other in this offense?
Well, Sneed actually started and played played a lot in the first half. I don't think he played much in the second half. I don't think there was an injury issue, but the running back room is a position that is very, very deep on this team. Sneed is a talent. He's a big guy. He's a bigger guy. They haven't really had a running back quite that big. And then Johnny Lang was the hot guy last week. He had a good game. Marcel Murray is probably the number 3 running back. And 3 years ago, he was Sunbelt Conference Freshman of the Year. And I mean, he had a pretty good sophomore year, but he's been injury plagued, and he just has not quite gotten back to that level. In my opinion, if he's the guy he was as a freshman, he's the best back of all of them. He doesn't quite have the vision of some of the other guys, but I mean, just ability. He's just has a lot of talent. They got Marquez Cross, who is a transfer from Purdue in that room. He's an Arkansas guy. And then they have a freshman out of Alabama that's really smooth looking. So it's a deep room. But I think they all kind of mesh well. They all have different talents. And I think Butch is going to go with the hot hand, and it will either be one of the first 2 guys.
Defensively, the game last week was 58-3, and people can simply sit here and say Grambling State's not a worthy opponent. Grambling State's not good. Grambling State this, Grambling State that. They don't have the better competition. But anytime you're on a football field and you hold a team to only 3 points, that says something. Now, I get it. Now, Grambling State is maybe a lesser opponent, but I got to think, man, this defense, they probably did some things good last week, especially knowing Grambling State was going to have to pass the ball to keep up with the scoring of Arkansas State. That defense did some things that were really good, and I'm curious how you viewed that performance last week in week 1.
The defense did what it had to do. The 3 points they gave up was a drive where there were 3 15-yard penalties against Arkansas State. So the Red Wolves gave them 45 yards right there. But it was the defense is better. The linebackers are better. The back 7 is better. The front 7, the front line is not as good, in my opinion, yet. I mean, they lost a portal guy to Texas Tech. They lost another portal guy to Arkansas. And if those guys are still here, then in my opinion, they have a chance to be a pretty good defense. But you're breaking in new guys. They're very, very young. Kevon Bennett, all-conference defensive end. A lot of people know and remember his father, Cornelius Bennett, who was a legend at Alabama and an NFL Hall of Famer with the Bills. It's kind of neat to see him walking around at games. But his son, Kevon, they tried him at linebacker. They didn't quite have the pass rush that they needed up front, so they moved him back to defensive end. Will still play linebacker some because they think that's his position at the next level. But I think the defensive line is the whole key to this whole season. And it's a line of scrimmage game. If the offensive line and defensive line plays well, then that greatly improves your chances of winning. But the defense did some good things. They only created one turnover, but they limited damage. And the way the game is so geared to help the offense these days, holding somebody to 3 that didn't have an excessive amount of turnovers or penalties or something like that, I think that is a great accomplishment.
It is. It's an accomplishment that will be a morale booster going into a game. Everybody knows who Ohio, like what Ohio State is, Ohio Stadium, the horseshoe, the nickname of the stadium. People know that, but people also know about the offense that people believe the Buckeyes will have in 2022. Arkansas State can use that performance last week to try to build up their own morale and boost their own gain some self-esteem and self-confidence going into this matchup, because it's going to be tough. It's going to be really, really tough, and they're going to need to find anything they can to help build their own confidence going into a really tough test on Saturday afternoon.
There's no question. This is a test. The previous athletic director, Terry Mahajer, who's now at Central Florida, did a great job of maximizing the money in what you call the buy game or whatever you want to call them. And Arkansas State's getting $1.8 million for this. But the problem is when you go for those big buy games, you're usually dealing with elite programs.
Yeah.
In recent years, they've been to Alabama, they've been to Georgia, they're going to Ohio State. Next year, they're going to Oklahoma. The year after that, they're going to Michigan. I mean, and when you deal with those teams, your chances of victory, it's a thin margin, and you better be perfect, and they better help you out a lot. But anyway, I think, if you play well, yes, it boosts your confidence, but at the same time, it's just one of 12. And there have been years that Arkansas State has played these games and gotten hammered pretty good, and it really didn't have an effect on the rest of the season. So I think that's really what the game plan is. I think they'll try to run a lot. I think they will try to use a short control passing game and try to keep the clock moving and shorten the game.
Jeff, what are your last thoughts about this year's Arkansas State team as they're heading into a really big matchup, tough matchup for the Red Wolves on Saturday afternoon against the Ohio State Buckeyes?
I think the team is better than it was a year ago. I think it's better than it was 2 years ago. That's when the slide began. It's hard to gauge things right now because you played Grambling and you did what you probably should against Grambling.
Right.
Okay. Now you're making this massive jump in talent level.
Yeah.
You're going from Grambling, which is not exactly a powerhouse FCS, to Ohio State, one of the elite FBSs. I mean, and it's a major talent level and jump. And I think the team, it's hard to gauge after these first two.
Right.
When we get Memphis next week, the talent level will be closer. And then after that, you're in the conference play and you can get a better indication of what you have. But I think the team is better. Like I said earlier, I think it could be anywhere from 4 to 8. And you think, well, 4 wins isn't a whole heck of a lot, but you had 2 last year, so that's a pretty good,
right there, buddy.
A pretty good jump. I personally think that they've got a chance to get to a bowl game, but we'll see. But it's a huge challenge. You go up there, play your best, get your paycheck, go home, and let's start focusing on the rest of the season.
Jeff Reed covers Arkansas State for 24/7 Sports. I'm glad he could come on the podcast and help us get to know a little bit more about, or just know some things about, Ohio State's next opponent, the Arkansas State Red Wolves. The game will be Saturday afternoon at 12 noon Eastern time. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on Locked on Buckeyes. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. You have a good day.